I coached basketball for 25 years, and when we get our ass really kicked, I just in my post game talk, I'd just start laughing and just be like, "Isn't there something so cleansing about just getting your ass kicked? It's like you're starting from zero." So we'll go to practice on Monday. We'll figure this shit out. Yeah. Welcome back to the Futures Edge podcast. I'm Jim Murio. As always, brains behind the operation, executive producer, co-host Bob Iacchino. The reason I always argue that our podcast is so good, Bobby and I get the best guests, and we have Emma Muhleman, who's one of our favorite people, macro expert, portfolio manager, exercise enthusiast, all-around fun person. How are you, Emma? Nice to see you.
Good. Nice to see you. Glad to hear
Good.
some other exercise enthusiasts.
Yes, we by the way, did you guys know who Richard Reeves is? I want to get him on the podcast. I talked to you about him, Bobby, once, because he wrote a book called The Boys and Men, and a chapter of it is about the next generation, essentially your generation and below, Emma. And just part of it was, so little like exercise and muscle and testosterone.
It
is
really such a problem. And the problem is nobody I feel very strongly that there's like nobody informs them. And so people allow their kids to sit and play video games for 10 hours all day, not go outside. They don't force them to play sports. They don't I played soccer since I was in 4 years old in a little kiddie league, but it was the elite Hotspurs, and then when I stayed on all the way until college.
Right. And not only they not inform them, in some ways they made it seem like caring about being physically strong was like somehow toxic masculinity, whatever the hell that stupid saying means. Jesus. Yeah, it's sad to me.
I think that's the portion that I think the more deleterious part. I mean, that's obviously extremely deleterious, but I don't think most people will be like, yeah, sure. There's those wackos, but the other ones are just like not paying enough attention, and they hand the iPad to the kids because the kids driving them crazy, and then it goes downhill from there. So my brother's got 5 daughters, and 4 of them are under the age of 7. But he's got real young all the way. So yeah. So I told him, I called him and said, don't let them get iPads. My mom bought them for him. I said, don't let her do it. And so he didn't let her do it. Sorry, Mom. We didn't want that. We need them working out.
There's a funny shift because Emma, I know you're too young to remember this, but Jimmy will. There was a commercial years ago. I want to say it was Nike, but it could have been Coca-Cola. And it was this whole thing about these young girls repeating, "If you let me play sports." Do you remember that, Jimmy?
Yeah.
Basically, they were listing off all the statistics of how much better their life is. It's like I'm 60% less likely to stay in an abusive relationship if you let me play sports. I'm 40% likely to try cocaine if you let me play. And it was all these things. And the very end was like these 3 really fit younger girls, whether they're 12, 15, whatever, just repeating, "If you let me play sports, if you let me play sports." And my sister, that just burned in her brain. And my sister has 3 daughters, and each one of them have done soccer, basketball, track, everything. And the youngest one especially is kind of how I imagine a young Emma Muhleman, just batshit crazy over her sports. She plays soccer in the morning, comes home, jumps rope, runs a mile, and then plays a basketball game at night. And my sister's like, "Why aren't you resting?" She goes, "I don't want to cool down." And she's just like this, freaking wild-eyed about her games all the time. If somebody steals the ball from her and fouls her in basketball and it's not called, she runs down to the court and freaking knocks the kid down. She's amazing, right? All because of sports, as opposed to just sitting down, being on TikTok or Snap Talk or whatever.
And let alone that's like a double, because think of how deleterious that is to your brain. Plus, you're missing the aerobic and the anaerobic benefits to your brain, and even strength training has benefits to your brain. And it's the most effective up until the age of 16. So that's when your brain's the most elastic. So that's the critical period you want to have your kids exercising. Yeah.
And good fun competition. People like they vilify competition. Competition is awesome. There's nothing wrong with getting your ass kicked. That's gonna be a learning
I love it.
experience. Everyone.
Oh, if I
Yeah.
get my butt kicked, I go, I am going to get there. I don't care if it takes
Oh,
2
no
years,
doubt.
3 years.
Yeah.
I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to run that fast. We'll do whatever it takes.
Yep.
Like, I love
Yeah.
it. I love it.
I coached
Without
basketball for
competition.
25 years, and when we get our ass really kicked, I'd just in my post game talk, I'd just start laughing and just be like, "Isn't there something so cleansing about just getting your ass kicked? It's like you're starting from zero." So let's go to practice on Monday. We'll figure this shit out. Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
hilarious. I almost feel like, to be frank, I was on like the best soccer team that there was. We literally only got our ASS picked like twice by this same team. And I was a sweeper because I was a fast girl. And there was only one person in the league that could get that. She was like, okay, this will be politically inappropriate to say that way. She had the physical characteristics and the strength of like, maybe a man. Like I could not. I mean, I tried year after year. I tried, and I couldn't stop her. And so that was that time. Those are times we would only lose by like, so I could stop her a few times, but I could never keep her from getting to that goalie. And so she would always win by like a point or two. And that kind of losing is kind of like not so fun. But if you do like get your butt kicked, it's almost like you laugh about like it becomes like hilarious at a point.
and that becomes the motivation. I
got used to that with Notre Dame for a while there.
Did you play at Notre Dame, by the way?
Oh no, so I had a scholarship to SC, but I tore my ACL on my right leg for the 4th time on the same knee. So my orthopedic surgeon was like, we could take your patellar tendon out of your left knee or your hamstring, because they already took that out of the right and my hamstring out of my right. They took cut it out and put it in the
I had that surgery. Yeah.
Did they use your hamstring too?
No, they used my patella tendon, and the patella cutting out the patella tendon hurt a crap ton more than putting back in it as an ACL. I mean, and now I still can't kneel on the knee, and it was 15 years ago. But it's all misshapen where they cut out the patella tendon. It's a terrible surgery.
You had a bad surgeon.
You think so?
Yeah, because we had the rounds. Like, tell him I said no.
He's a good guy. He's a buddy of mine. Tom Kim, if you're watching that, I was exaggerating. You're a great surgeon.
But like, because like I mean, I don't have any like, so you can't even see the scars where they took the patellar tendon out.
Oh, really?
No.
Good for you.
You can feel the one that was miserably painful was when they think about your hamstrings being tight, okay, and think about they take like a chunk this big out of it. So what they have to do after that is, you can probably see, I don't know if you see like this. You're on a machine that goes like this. You have to sleep on it.
By the way, if you guys are listening on Spotify, switch to YouTube. Emma's showing us scars on her legs right now. That's just a public service announcement. You continue.
No, not the
There's
scars.
video on Spotify.
You got to go like this. Like, it's a machine. You have to sleep with the machine upward like this for months. For months.
Oh,
and I wanted off that thing. So I got off. I was thinking like, I can do this. And so when I stepped down, it's like, put weight on that. Wrong decision. I probably ended up on the stupid machine for another like extra 2 months more than I would have had to had it not. Oh man. But yeah, hey, we all recover, and it's so important. I mean, I can tell you it from direct experience playing soccer, and I was a competitive cheer, that like after school I was busy until 9 p.m. with nothing. I could not, I couldn't go do bad
You couldn't get into anything, right? Then. You really couldn't.
What?
You couldn't get into any crap.
Exactly. Except for on the weekends, maybe. But then I was always at tournament, so like there was no time there either. And then if you want to play good soccer, you can't really like toward the end of there, like I might have like gone out on a Friday night and had a few drinks and then played the next morning. And I was like, oh, this doesn't feel so great. But I didn't drink much, and I was little. It was fine. But you really can't.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, let's talk about markets and macro and shit that people tune in for. Although, if you didn't think that was a fun conversation, this might be the wrong podcast for you, because I thought it was a very fun conversation.
I got to point out, Jimmy, there is video on Spotify. So.
Okay, good. That's good.
You have to teach me how to use that.
I'll teach you. It's very easy. It's better than YouTube because there's no commercials in the middle of the show or anything like that. So
I don't have to pay for YouTube Music anymore.
What's that?
Because I pay for YouTube Music, but I don't watch the videos, and they keep not downloading the things. Like my things are downloaded and they disappear.
Like here it is, right? I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is Spotify. Right? You turn it, it comes up. It's all good.
Why does mine not look like that? It just
I'm
has a
smarter
list
than
like
both of
this.
you, so it doesn't help.
I think I'm just a clown. I'll have to figure it out.
I'll show you.
Can we at some point talk about markets? Is that
let's
going
do
to
that,
happen?
Jeff.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go.
It's
Let's
kind
do
of
it.
been it's kind of been a big couple weeks. It seems like it's an inflection point. I was on with Scott Shelley today on his show, and here's my opinion. I want to see what you think too. It's the reason the yield curve inverted more. So we got you guys were filming this on Friday. We had higher than expected CPI data last week. People tried to explain it off as the owner's equivalent rent portion of it. CPI then came out on Thursday, still high. PCE came out today, Friday, the whatever date it is. PCE came out today, still high. My contention is this, is that either inflation is modestly picking up again, or those are backward-looking measures, and the Fed is going to overcorrect based on backward-looking measures. Where are you? Can you fill in the blanks for us?
Yeah, so they're backward-looking measures, but there's also, that's because everybody in consensus is saying that, right? So if I want to make money, I think the Fed will probably overcorrect. I don't see them, you know, with 4.6 or 4.7 handle on the PCE stopping like anytime soon. And everything's been priced in a lot. Like, you know, when you said disinflation or deflation, like 11 or 15 times on the latest briefing. I mean, people got the message, and that got. If you look at the interest rate futures markets, you can see like it's priced in. So I'm not going to make money there unless I do the opposite, right? Unless I bet, like I take long positions, expecting SOFR to go up. And I'm trying to use SOFR with you guys here. So if I like completely mangle it, you're going to have to help me. But yeah, so I had I'm listening to Nancy a little bit to try to like get on her side with the SOFR. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, there's a lot of factors going on globally that we're not out of the woods yet, too. So just because we've seen some, certainly we've seen some inflation slowing. There are lagging indicators that are in there that were the main drivers. So, and then there's also a lot of things coming up on the horizon that could cause more inflation. So, you know, I would, you know, if I'm looking for the best probability, I'm looking at options on interest rates going up, right? I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so here is, the first thing I wanted to say is, where are you on the one of the two opinions that Jimmy may have? So I want to kind of frame the question you asked, Jim, because you said, I think this or I think this. Where are you on those two things? And I think there's a third thing. Okay. And again, not jumping on you here, but when you look at how inflation traveled to the 8% high that it got to, it was not up 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%. It was up 5, then 4.6, then 5.7, then 5.6, and it tacked up, right?
Great point.
And I see no reason inflation should fall straight down either in terms of a month over month basis. So, you know, one of the things that I was talking to, I don't remember who about, was that there's no reason in my mind that when people started to see inflation, they started to see disinflation. Jerome Powell said it 11 times. When they started to see disinflation, right, they immediately said prices are coming down. That's it. They're not going anywhere else. They're just coming down. And in the meantime, crude oil rises about 7 or 8%. Gasoline now is 1 cent lower than a year ago on premium, 2 cents lower than a year ago on regular. So like it's back. It's just, I'm not saying it's going back to 9%. As of today, the rate cut in December is gone now in terms of the highest probability thing from the Fed funds futures. But yesterday it was still there. And it seems to me the market is realizing, okay, it's not a matter of them not beating inflation back. It's a matter of, can they get to 2% or are they going to accept 4%? So which is more likely? And I'm asking both of you this, like, is it more likely that they accept a higher interest rate? So more likely that they get to 2%? Because if neither one of those happen, then rates stay up.
So I think they're going to have to deal with 4%. So rates are going to have to stay up, right? Like think about this, how many barrels do we have in this strategic reserve?
We have 256. We are 93 million barrels away from a place where they can no longer release legally. Only
So
93 million barrels.
So they're going to have to enter the market at some point and buy these things. And I wonder how they're going to do that without driving the price up like crazy. I mean, if I knew there was a fire like that,
what would you do? You'd buy it up, right? That's what people don't understand about markets, is when it doesn't matter how many they have to buy. If it's significant, we front run them and we don't apologize for it. Anyway, continue. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah. That's the beauty of a non-economic, the only beauty of a non-economic actor.
Yeah.
You know, there's one thing we can if we could beat them, make money off of them. Anyway, so yeah, there's that, and then what else? The Ukraine-Russia situation's not over yet. You know, I mean, there could be more rising prices in other commodities as well. So yeah, I mean, I just don't, and I also see like, I don't. Okay, so when we go to the labor problem, do you guys have this? Here's my thoughts, and I struggle with everybody's explanation that they try to give me, because none of them really, in my mind, answer the question of like what happened, what happened. Like we had, say, 2018, like you could go to Taco Bell, and during the hours that it's scheduled to be open, they had employees, and you can order food. So like I drive there the other day, and like it's like 2 p.m. and this says closed due to lack of employees. Like everywhere I go, it's like I see help wanted, help wanted, help wanted. And so I am finally coming to grips a little bit with the part that, yeah, maybe these retail traders are just making so much money that they don't need to work anymore. But because these jobs are not jobs that people do for fun, typically. Like, I mean, what happened to the 16-year-olds that do those jobs? Because I certainly was when I was 16. Maybe that we've become too rich. I don't know, but the job situation where they like to quote the 2-for-1 openings versus unemployed, I think that's a misleading number, because one, those 2 openings are like often software engineers and things that people with a graduate degree in liberal arts are not qualified for yet. And so unless they go to, like I say, Amazon, which will actually train you up, and they can, I don't know if Amazon's picky for that program, you know, I don't know if you have to work for them lower at a level for a while, but I think it's great that they're doing that. You know, that's not like that's going to be a feature. It's not going to go away, because you have to completely reskill the people that are, if you want to get all those fields that are, except for the Taco Bells. What happened to the Taco Bell people? I don't know. The Taco Bell people.
So I do have a couple opinions on that as well too. Well, first of all, Bobby, to your inflation question, I don't think they want 2% inflation. I think they'd love to have 3% inflation going forward too. I think this whole thing of them intentionally causing the amount of inflation that they did was a kind of a backdoor way of bailing out all the irresponsible debtors, particularly 5 states that were absolutely irreconcilable with their balance sheets. Illinois, this where I'm sitting, being one of them. And I think they realized that the only way that game could possibly continue is if they inflated that debt away. And they told us that for 10 years, by the way, that they were trying to spur inflation. That really could be the only reason why. So I think when they say they want to get back down to 2, oh, good, Emma's got something from that too. Let me finish.
I have a question.
Back down to, I think 3. Go. What do you got?
When did they? I don't know the history that well. So I was wondering, when did they? With the 5 states thing that you're talking about, like, was that recent or a long time ago?
No, this is the 5 states that whose debt loads. This is just my research. This is Illinois, California, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut. They were so indebted that they couldn't possibly service their debt, pay back their debt, and I believed that the Fed was pushing hard for inflation to kind of monetize that debt. And instead of, remember this, just 3 years ago, the Illinois' bonds were about to get downgraded to junk, which meant that a ton of pensions could no longer hold them. And that's the only reason they weren't being downgraded, is because Moody's, S&Ps, and whatever knew that as soon as they gave them one more notch lower, all hell would break loose. To me, it seemed like awful coincidental and really nice thing that all of a sudden Illinois One got $200 billion from the federal government. At the same time, they also could, claim whatever. I don't want to get too deep into the woods for any sort of conspiracy theory. Yeah, you got me?
So, well, and anyway, like, wouldn't like price stability be consistent with 0, not 2%? And apparently that's what Greenspan argued, and the only person everybody argued in the Federal Reserve Board back then for 0%, except for Janet Yellen, and she would not budge. And that's how we ended up with 2%.
But then the tax receipts, and if it's 3%, the tax receipts for all these states start to go higher, and they can actually service their debt. You don't think there's validity to that theory?
Oh, I mean, if to saying price stability equals 3% increase per year, because if you think the rule is 72 and 2%, and then that means you're doubling prices.
Oh, I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm just saying,
but you got
that looks small.
If you need to inflate your way out of debt, but since we have the reserve currency right now, we don't necessarily need to inflate our way out of debt at the country level, but at the state level, for me, I'm kind of ruthless. That's why I moved to Texas. Let them.
Let me go to one of your specialties. In my opinion, it's one of your specialties, China. A lot of people there, you speak about it a lot. And we have a question from a subscriber to our podcast, Dan McMendez. And I sent you the question, so I don't need to read it because it was a lot of paragraphs. Basically, for the people listening, Dan has looked at a lot of research on demographics and shrinking populations and what that does to economies and the workforce, et cetera. And we sent a question for Emma's opinion on the Chinese side of that, because it seems like they're going through the same thing. So do you just want to speak to that, Emma, or do you need more of the question?
No, absolutely. So this is really interesting because one of the things, I've written several papers, and I often either in the title or somewhere else, it says debts plus demographics equals, why can't I say demographic equals destiny? So anyway, meaning when you have bad demographics plus overwhelming debt loads, you are going to have an economy that's going to be kind of screwed in this malaise, like that you've seen Japan style. Like, you just need a wild, I know. So you need like a wild Corona and be like doing wild things and entering futures markets to like save your currency with 5 trillion notional on a Saturday, like you did last year. We'll miss the guy. Anyway, so with China specifically, well, first let's go like this. So if you look at, I also write one called Japanification, which is the same idea. I mean, Japan had an older population, and they had more debt, and so they started this little experiment first, and then Europe followed and China followed. China's debts or demographics didn't appear as bad, say, 15 years ago, but we didn't know all the information then. And then the intervening 20 years, so since 1995, over that 20-year period, as they moved people from farms and into cities, kids used to be, when you're on a farm, they're like free labor. When you're on the city, they're like expensive pets. So the Chinese stopped having kids. I mean, their fertility rates dropped way faster than anyone would ever imagine. And that's kind of like what typically happens when a country industrializes. But at that rate of industrialization that China went through, you would kind of expect to see a similar trajectory. So what happens right now are in the United States, we're just now hitting the replacement rate for fertility. So it's 2.1 for kids per woman. Obviously, this isn't how you average. It's an average, obviously. Nobody thinks anybody's having 2.1 babies. China's at 1.16.
Wow.
And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're at 1.16. And what's worse is when they, in 2020, when they came out and said that, oh, whoops, we overstated our population. They, the number was, it was what, 130 million was the top of the range they overstated it by, and they were all under the age of 35. And we know that the CCP is not one to go tell the world about its weaknesses. Okay, so if I had to guess, I would expect that people like those who write the China Beige book and the very few still American-born professors that exist in China would catch on if they didn't make some sort of update, and that's why they did, and they were unable to try to reverse the structure of their economy from export to internal consumption. That was Xi's whole plan, was like, oh, we're going to be able to reverse it so that all of our people will demand and our economy can grow that way. So we're not so reliant externally. So our whole property sector, that's a big policy, doesn't fall apart. But then that didn't work, right? Because they don't have enough money. Their average income is barely in the middle income category. I think it's over 10, and there's also the number punching that affects those figures as well. So you've got a bunch of people shoved in the cities now, not having kids, not having hardly, not making the type of money they expected to be making, not living the type of prosperous life they were promised. And over the intervening 20 years since 1995 till now, or 2025 is like the target for a former target of theirs for a population level. In that 20-year period, that rate, that 1.16, it went down even worse. So like there's a bunch of times. So if you look at 2019, it was the fertility rate got worse since COVID. It's not like a COVID factor. So during COVID, they had, just pretend, just to give illustration purposes, they had a higher rate than 1.16. And then in 2019, it was below 1.16. So it wasn't a COVID issue. It's not a COVID, that's why we're not having more kids. It's very much a secular thing. And especially when you have debt problems like they do. And the people who live there don't trust the banks, and that's rightfully so. So they go, where do I put my money? Historically, that's been in property, but now you can't trust that. And so what do? I mean, it's tough.
So here's my question. First of all, I thought when you said moving Chinese children went from being cheap labor to expensive pets, I think that's brilliant. And that should be the title of the show. There's something, it seems like what you're saying, if I can boil it down, and there was a second part to that question too, is that peak China is perhaps behind us. Now you throw in the fact that relations and supply chains with us are strained. And then all of a sudden, the second part of that question was a focus on India. And when we had Valina Chekarova, which by the way, I love saying that name, it's very melodic. When we had Valina on this show, she talked about just a kind of a morphing of China being the thing that's most important to us for several different economic reasons, and that potentially shifting over to India. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. So India's got great demographics. They've got a government that's far more democratic than you could even think about Xi being. I mean, Modi's not perfect, but India has the hardest working people. They have very bright people that are coming to, and that we don't have to worry about. When I had them in my program in AI, they were the best teammates, and they're not like espionage agents, at least as far as I'm aware. And I don't think Modi's conducting these big Sun Tzu style, espionage like China has done. And China, the kind of, when you do things like that, what goes around comes around. And now we're not letting those. It punishes the wrong people as well. So the child who grew up and worked hard in China can't come to our school and get good education. But hey, the Indians, they can, and they work hard. They're very bright. They have more people than China. I doubt they overstated it like China did. Maybe they understated it for all we know. Because they had it was very rural. I mean, it is very rural still. The one thing about it is, it's a hard transition when you're going from even just a basic chip fab facility to try to train up a new team and get it moved and get the people that you need, but I mean, it can absolutely be done and will be done. And I think, India is a prime beneficiary. So I'm a big fan of India, investment wise.
Emma, is Xi Jinping vulnerable at all or no?
I don't think he is, unfortunately. I mean, unless like somehow his security people didn't do a good job, and otherwise, I mean, I wish.
So this is it for the foreseeable future. The path they're on is going to continue.
Yeah, because at the last party congress, everybody he put on his team is like utterly afraid to ever even like they're not going to touch him or even think about like, let's get rid of this guy. You know what I mean?
Well, and the people aren't either after what they've been through over the last 5 years. Just to see the heavy hand of authoritarianism, are the people beaten down, or could the people possibly rise up? And there's a lot of different ways to rise up to change leadership.
So it's really difficult because of how well, and I never like to compliment a communist with evil strategies, but how well they planned in advance this surveillance. It's like they have got literally your face on like a movie theater sized billboard if you step into the street when it hasn't hit the go yet, and then it says your name out loud for everybody to hear. Hits your social credit score. I mean, it's really hard. And so they've got VPNs. So I used to get a lot of Chinese people that were inside China reaching out to me on Twitter and LinkedIn, asking me to continue my efforts because they're under an evil dictatorship and they wanted him gone. And so they even created a picture of my face and put like the Twitter thing, but they turned it red, like for the Communist Party, and we're distributing it. I was like, fine with me. They asked for my information. They're like, we already did this, but I hope you're okay with it. But it's got to be very demoralizing. I personally know some folks that are in the Communist Party. They've been one of them is I don't, without giving away anything, the Communist Party has a lot of people that are not, Xi in the top 7, right? So he's a surgeon, and the wife, I don't know what she does, but they're both CCP members, old guard, obviously. Well, I guess that wasn't obvious, I didn't say it. But they're old guard, whereas everybody pretty much in the Communist Party did not want to see what happened at the latest thing where they carried out they didn't. So what happens is she put the list of the 7 people he wanted on his team, and the CCP would not approve it. The other members were like, no, these people don't have any experience in this. All you're doing is like getting people that will completely agree with you, and you have no regard for like our growth, our prosperity, the country, the people. So it was voted against. And so Hu Jintao had the paper, and he had a mic. He was sitting there right next to Xi, and so he got up to say, "Hey, we were voting against this." And then she just ordered the guards to take his mic off immediately, and then grab the papers from him and carry it and walk him out and kind of pull him out, I guess.
I saw it, yeah.
Yeah, and the reason he did that, I mean, he was gonna do that because he wanted the rest of the world to know somehow that like something's going on beyond unfortunately, like probably what he doesn't realize, what so many people know and ignore. There's like the stick. It's horrible. I mean, like Apple finally making announcements that they're leaving China. This is very good news. Very, very late, but what do you do?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe he'll get a heart attack or something.
We can always look on the bright side, right? Exactly. Which, by the way, I don't feel guilty about saying and thinking things like that. These are people who do harm, people who don't care about others' human rights. I don't care that LeBron James works for him and will say great things and the NBA loves China. Logical, normal people don't have to be part of that bullshit. It's absolutely ridiculous, Bobby. Which actually, before Bobby, so when I see things like central bank digital currency potentially coming here. Vivek was the first candidate who spoke out against that. Isn't this the playbook, the communist playbook, when they set it all up ahead of time, when they have complete surveillance on everything we do, Emma?
That's exactly how they've done it. I don't know what goes on at the WEF. What I hear, well, actually, so maybe I'll talk to you guys. I want to talk to you guys offline about something. I have a little inside info on what might be headed down the pike. But I mean, I feel like there's not much we can do about it except for move our money out of here and somewhere that's not going to cooperate. But I don't know if the U.S. puts a full and heavy hand toward it. You know, you can go.
Blows me away that we're even talking about this. Bobby?
I know.
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about it for years as to where would somebody go? Like, where would you actually go? Where would it make sense? You know, it would always be in the hopes of the U.S. righting the ship. But at this point, what does righting the ship here look like?
Like if they had, are you saying if they had created, like basically the way they'd have to do it is say, hey, we now have this United States programmable central bank digital currency. We have transferred from every bank the equivalent number of dollars per account. Now they're in these programmable things. The money under your mattress, if you don't get it there within X hours, you're SOL. Because I mean, doesn't it become like abundantly clear right then and there that they're trying to monitor everything you do? Like, does that not?
It really struck me when they banned the big drinks in New York. That was the biggest one. When
Bloomberg they banned the what? Oh,
the big 64-ounce sodas in New York.
Oh, yeah, right.
You know, for all you know, like, look, here's somebody, Emma, she's in shape. She's been athletic since she was 4 years old. If she wants to go to Taco Bell, she'd be able to go to fucking Taco Bell. You know, the minute they started doing shit like that, I started getting concerned. But we all just kind of go about it day to day. And when I see something like, you know, the CBDC, the central bank digital currency, I think, well, okay, they're going to say, you know, you're a little overweight and you're costing the public healthcare system a little too much money. So your currencies can only be used for fresh broccoli and, you know, boiled shrimp. And I think of it from that perspective, I'm like, no. And I know that I can use my cash at Brandt's, Palatine, Burger Joint, Jimmy O's.
That's my restaurant.
Restaurant, Jimmy O's. I know I can use it at my brother's.
There you go, the plug.
Plug always comes. I know I can use, and by the way, I'm the one who always does it, and he doesn't pay me extra for that.
I thought he did.
No, and you know, I know I'll be able to use it at my brother's restaurant. I know I'll be able to buy guns and ammunition from my brother. I just can't tell anyone about it. But like you said, the money under your mattress. At some point, I went to a damn salad restaurant the other day, and I was mad enough that I had to go to a salad restaurant. But the entire group of people, I was like, I'm going out to get food. And all six of them go, hey, go to that salad place. I'm like, well, do they have cheeseburgers there for me? But so I went there and I got a salad. By the way, I got a buffalo chicken salad. I asked them to go easy on the lettuce and heavy on the chicken and ranch. But
there you go.
Yeah, I walk up and they got a tip jar of dollars, right? And I pull out my money and she goes, I'm sorry, we don't take cash here. I'm like, well, I've got 4 20s and some hundreds. How am I supposed to tip you? She smiles at me. I go, no, quit. This is not the way. No, I'm not giving you $20. I go, I'll pay for this food with my debit card, not even a credit card, with my debit card, because I know that, you know, I got to bring the food back or I'm going to have 5 people mad at me. But other than that, if it were just for me, I would have been like, I'm sorry, I didn't know. Keep the salad. But I just don't think there's enough of us.
So did they let you pay with your card?
They let me pay with my card, but I told you, I said, I can't tip you guys. I'm sorry.
Okay. So let this be a lesson to anybody who is watching. If somebody tries to tell you that they do not accept cash, literally start ordering more stuff and then say, I only have cash.
Yeah.
Like because
test them.
Because they can do it, because they can change it. You know what I mean? Clearly.
So people,
I'm going to go and order 12 salads for myself, which the minute I walk in, they won't believe.
What's the place called? Because I want to start doing it too.
It's Just Salad, I think.
Yes, that stupid company.
Yeah, it's
I think it's a public company.
I'm telling you, when I walk in, nobody believes I'm there of my own volition. The second somebody looks like me walks in, And like, what kind of kale do you have? Do you have Lucinto kale? Do you have I don't even know what Lucinto kale is.
No,
And
do I?
I'm going to do that. I'm going to go in and order 26 salads and be like, I only have hundreds. What can I do?
But again, so people who this central bank digital currency thing, and this is not to you guys, it. This is one of the most frustrating things to me because I don't think people understand the severity of the situation. As soon as they do it, as soon as they move us all to central bank digital currency, it is game over for individual liberties the moment they say it is, and that won't be the first day. It'll start the second day. The first day will be like, oh, isn't this convenient? But it is absolutely. And Bobby said that a couple pounds of weight. I actually think the opposite way. I think they won't let you eat meat. You got to eat bullshit stuff because they like us fat and lazy and stupid because we're easier to control that way. I actually think if you're not eating your proper amount of crickets or your, whatever the environmental flavor of the day is, you're not. I think that it could be a terrible, terrible thing. So I'm terrified.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Like, it's not. So do you hear the book Nudge?
I know the book. I haven't read it.
Well, there's been a whole there's a whole controversy about it, and it's about like using economic things to nudge people to do things that the government deems is they're in their best interest. Like,
I'd like to nudge
to figure it out.
them.
Yeah, and so the British, well, at least the British former central banker John Carney, was one particular offender, and he goes, it'll be perfect, the Brit coin, and then you can go and then if you don't buy cigarettes, because the cigarettes are going to be a lot more Bitcoin, so it'll make you want to buy, not flavored soda. Like it'll help everybody's diet. They'll get gym membership for cheaper. Blah blah blah. Like he's like literally talking about designing people's lives with his Bitcoin. And they've several others have made comments to that effect in the UK. So I would be, yeah, it's amazing that like. When I read it too, I was like, nobody wants to push back on, nobody pushed back on this because there's plenty of people in the room and on the transcript that could have said something, but nothing.
No, my doggy keeps walking by my door.
Did you ever see that video of the Russian KGB defector from like the 70s who talks about the whole plan that the KGB had to start with universities? If you guys haven't watched that, look that up.
What is it called?
I don't know. I'll find it and I'll send it to you. But for anybody watching, just like Google KGB defector in the 70s predicts the current environment or something like that. Is there like a 20 or 30-minute video? And this guy is like, well, we decided to plant communists in the universities and then into the grade schools and figuring once we change the kids, they come and then they become the professors and they get even worse. It's bizarre how accurate it is. It's bizarre.
Well, it's pretty simple though, the way that works, right? Like I'm worried because my generation is so bizarre but they've been indoctrinated and they don't like to think for themselves. And now they've just made it a policy to just not think for themselves. And so whatever it is the indoctrination is, they're gonna go and continue that on. Especially if you're, and so like it's like if we were in the fourth turning, say, I don't know if you guys read that book by Neil Howe. I'm wondering like if I'm fighting back and these are the people that I have to that I'm supposed to be rebuilding institutions with, how well is this going to go? Well, hopefully
not very.
Yeah, or the few like you, Bobby, me, Kyle Bass, and some bright folks will end up doing all the work.
We'll be in one of his warehouses with all his.
I'll have like gray hair one day, and I'll be like Lagarde. I'll be like, reading from a script. Anyway.
Before we call it in the next 5 minutes or so, can we bring back to markets? Because I want to know what market outlook is, not just for the next month, 6 months, because obviously the risk assets are having a difficult time recalibrating to the ever-changing rate picture. So if you think rates are necessarily going up over the next 6 months, do you think risk assets have to suffer?
Well, I hate to use the term necessarily, but I think they more than like the probability is that. Okay. So do I think risk assets must suffer because of that? Not necessarily, but they should theoretically. Do I think they will? I hate the future predicting thing.
I do, by the way.
It
I do.
depends on which risk asset. It's which ones you're talking about. Are we talking? Can I talk
Stocks.
about commodities? Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So how about so say miners and metals and mining companies, and even maybe gold miners, lithium producers, SQM types, the bigger ones, Glencore types, then your Exxon types, then your Chevrons and your Occidentals that are just printing cash. The things that everything other than I've said so far, the ones that print cash are the ones that I think will do well. Despite the latest little run for the Kathy Wood fans, I don't see that lasting. I mean, people need the cash, and they've kind of figured out that like cash is king finally. It seems. I don't know. What's your take?
Well, Bobby, I'm going to ask Bobby too, because Bobby, you predicting a big leg down in equities, and you predicted, I think, for the first quarter of this year, but a while ago, and it seems like it's afoot. But to me, I always argue that there's not this massive speculative market position on that could fuel the big one. To me, it seems like it should be just a regular old correction. And I have 3,800 as my first move lower. I sold some of those puts today on the big down leg. Do you think this is the big one? What do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been talking about it since late last year, that I thought the end of the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter would bring about a break of the October lows. And I've been saying that in the face of this bull market. And, people to me are so day to day and week to week that they kept saying to me, a lot of our individual subscribers and clients and things like that are like, you still think it? You still think it? I'm like, yeah, I'll let you know when it changes. I mean, I'm not long, and from that perspective, I actually think the NASDAQ's going to climb and bounce next week, but I think next week is critical. So no, I'm not necessarily thinking this is it. What I think is that, and Jimmy, I've said this for a while, and Emma, I'd like your take on this. I've said for a long time that the market is fighting the Fed. And what that shows you is that the market doesn't believe the Fed, and fair enough. Okay.
I gotta push back on you.
Well, I mean, do we really?
Not about that. Not about
okay.
The market fighting the Fed.
That's okay.
But the market over paying attention to the Fed when the thing that's actually driving things is the Bank of Japan.
Is the Bank of Japan? Well, they're
not. Their liquidity injections.
The movement of liquidity that is caused by what the Bank of Japan does has literally every move you've seen since October 21st, when you saw the reversal in the 10-year yields and you saw the reversal in USD JPY. That was all. If you could put it on a chart, the yield and the dollar yen and the timing of when the announcement was made, and you will see clear as day what caused that event. And then the next day, on television, you've got like Goldman's macro heads like blaming it on the Fed again. That was last week. Like, it's just like nobody pays enough attention to the BOJ, especially at a time when the BOJ like at the final, seemingly like, what in the world are they going to do? Like,
okay.
I mean, how much longer can they do?
So explain that to me like I'm a 5-year-old. Walk me through what the actual steps are of the BOJ's effect into, say, the NASDAQ or a commodity. Pick a commodity. I don't care. Just like walk me through this step by
So
step.
there's two forces. One is Japan's a huge. They're huge. The people of Japan are big savers, right? But they can't get any interest in their own country, so they go elsewhere, right? But it goes through these big Japanese insurance companies and these big Japanese banks, and these life insurance companies, the biggest one. And so they're the biggest owners of U.S. Treasuries, 1.1 trillion roughly. And then they dip into. They'll invest in our NASDAQ, they'll invest in CLOs, they'll invest in CDOs. I mean, they don't, I don't know. When I say they, I'm talking about the big insurers, the big companies. They've obviously got somebody managing this for them, but those people who manage it for them are a little, we saw what happened in 2008 and who got screwed. And it was not as much Americans as it was investors in like Singapore. In Japan. So what I see is like if the BOJ is kind of getting like reaching the point of like, I don't know if you guys are aware, but when they released in January what they had done, February, for what they had done in January, for monetary policy operations, because they used to do fixed rate operations and announce in advance we're only going to buy only 5 trillion yen worth of Japanese government bonds. And then it got so bad because there'd be no bids that they said, okay, we're just not announcing this anymore. We will buy unlimited JGBs, period, whenever it's needed. And then you'll find out at the end of the month how many we bought. So in January, in 2 days alone, 2 Japanese cash trading days, they spent over US dollar 150 billion defending the yen. That is after so when you saw like the tides turn in early this year, time that with look at that at the chart right next to the BOJ meeting, the release when they released the data about what had been going on, because this is the thing I wanted to cue in on and see if you guys already knew about it, because it's hard to like decipher these things when you read there. Yeah, so they didn't call it anti-fragmentation. They came up with some other funky name, but it's really just called like fraud, or like there's a name for it if we do it. But what they're doing is they said to the banks, these big 4 Japanese banks, that hey, all right, we're gonna give you yen. Well, we're gonna have them, and you're gonna buy them, but you're not gonna have to pay for them. So then we're gonna give them to you, and then we'll pay you interest on them. And so it will appear that there's actually some activity in this market. And the bank said, all right, I'm getting free JGB, and I'm getting paid interest to hold it.
So the contention is, Emma, just to put it cleaner for people, you're saying that these BOJ liquidity injections, injecting 100 billion into the system on one day, bleeds into dollar-denominated assets. People buy bonds, people buy the Nasdaq, when we look and say, well, our stock market and even our bond market is disagreeing with the Fed, you're saying it's being kind of obfuscated by that money coming over here, correct?
I think a lot of the bond investors know they're paying attention to the BOJ, but and say maybe your Eurodollar futures or your interest rate futures traders, they probably are paying attention to the BOJ, but then the rest of the market, which is still a ton of money, I mean, they don't even talk. They don't even have an idea. They blame everything on the Fed. They even ignore the ECB and say attribute price action to what Fed went on Tuesday. ECB just went, price action occurs, and they blame it back on the Fed from Tuesday. It's like I struggle to follow what's going on in their heads, right?
So yeah, this is a great takeaway from this show, because I think that is freaking brilliant and fascinating. Bobby?
Awesome. No, that's awesome. And that's what I mean by, like, in terms of, I guess I could rephrase myself by saying fighting the central banks. Ueda said that lower rates are still appropriate, right? And that's that whole same playbook coming through, where they're just going to continue to spill yen into the market. And it seems like it should be many people's largest trade, right? Is to be short. We're not seeing that yet, right?
See, because here's why. I mean, if you want to be, okay, like the graveyard of widows is gigantic. The Ministry of Finance in Japan is determined to kill anyone who dares short the yen, and they come up with the most nonsense. Like, I mean, so normally this is like historical norms, it's been going on for a long time. When a country wants to intervene in the markets to adjust, we'll call it, their relative currency rate, they will get agreement from our U.S. Treasury, as the U.S. Treasury will say, yeah, sure. And then they'll go in the cash markets, the spot markets, where people can see and know what's going on, and they will, defend the yen. But this time, they were trying to catch people off guard. They waited until when the Ministry of Finance guys go home. They're government employee types. They're not like Kuroda types. Like, people don't think of them as like Kuroda style. So they think of them as like they're home. They already gone home. Nothing's happening. So they then pop up at 10 a.m., 11 a.m. Eastern time, October 21st, in futures markets to take 5 trillion notional long and short dollar. Like, that's wild. But what they had done, the way they did it, they first put less. They thought they could squeeze out the shorts with less money. Didn't work. Did a little more. Still didn't quite work. a little more. Still didn't quite work. And then they just slammed 5 trillion. And like, that's scary. I mean, for me, if I'm too scared. I'm not going to be short. I would love to short it, but I'm too scared. If I could short it somehow, it's a long complexity. So like,
And so people who may have lost the thread, I think what Emma's saying too, they try to pick times where perhaps the market is liquid, or try to pick times where the yen is naturally just in a normal trading ebb and flow, starts to rally a little bit. And that's when they come in to try to punish everybody. Correct?
Correct, especially the first part when it's illiquid.
Yeah.
Thin.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, thin markets, and when people aren't paying attention, and exactly.
Yeah. All right. Any last words? I gotta go. I gotta take a little snooze and then go to the bar.
What currency should we buy? I just came from a currency conference. I've been talking about currencies all day, so I just want to hear your opinion.
I guess the dollar right now. I mean, both the pound and the euro had such stunning runs from those October lows higher. So I think that trades are crowded to the upside.
Oh, yeah.
I know the euro's lost 3.5% in about 2 weeks' time, but I still think if we are now repricing, more Fed aggressiveness on the short end, I think the dollar's the way to be, for at least for the time being. I'm not saying for a couple of weeks. Bobby, do you agree?
Yeah, I do. I think the only thing I would possibly buy is if the yen can hold the January lows. I'm sorry, the pound, the yen. I'm certainly not buying the yen either. If the pound can hold the January lows, I would buy that again. But it just barely held over the last 2 weeks. So I'm keeping an eye on that.
Oh, and Canada's been in a tight range. If Canada breaks out of their range to the upside, they've traded kind of sideways as both the pound and the euro have traded lower. So I have that on my screen. I'm maybe looking for a long at that if it trades higher, but that has to come along with crude oils going higher too, I think. Yeah.
I could get behind that one. I don't think I can get behind the I think it's always Bobby that I disagree with.
Yeah,
so
it's funny.
he's right.
It's difficult to explain. It's not difficult to explain at all. What we do is I look for the least likely breakout, which for now the pound is up. And if that doesn't succeed, the more likely breakout is down for the pound. And if it doesn't succeed, it's a good trade.
Oh,
right?
there you go. Okay.
So that's sort of that's why I said if it holds the January lows, most people are playing it to break out to the downside. And so if it does, I won't be involved at all. But if it doesn't, there's going to be not only short covering, but there's pretty good room to the upside for it. There'd be a lot of fundamental things that would have to happen, and I don't think they're going to. But I've never.
What would be interesting would be like, think of how the Ministry of Finance has been so effective at like creating widows. And for the audience, that means preventing people from making money shorting its currency. What if we just put our weight behind the Ministry of Finance and we're wild and went long yen?
Just as the low liquidity starts, just go in there and buy 10 lots and leave it. 10 futures.
That wasn't me.
Yeah.
Emma, will your travels bring you to Chicago anytime this summer, you think, or no?
Probably, yeah, actually.
Good.
Everybody here is from Chicago mostly.
That's
They're all
very
market
cool.
makers.
Good.
Yeah.
When you do, contact
know.
me. We'll have coffee or something. Yeah, I bet I know.
I know.
Something,
I need your cell phone number though. I don't have it. I have Bobby's.
I'll send it. I'll email it to you right now. Yeah.
You probably already gave it to me. I'm the worst. But thank you guys.
All right. Thank you for being on the show. It's just so much fun to talk to you. I really enjoyed it quite a bit. And have a great weekend. Bobby, got anything?
I got nothing. Cheers, guys. Thanks, Emma.
Cheers, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye.